Hello YouTube, my name is Ryo099 and today I'm going to be bringing you another Yu-Gi-Oh deck profile. This one is my Sky Striker deck profile. I really like the Sky Strikers. I think they were such a fun deck. They still see some sort of competitive play, but of course with the engages and stuff being banned, it's not at full power, but with it anyway, I just thought it'd be a nice fun deck profile to bring you. So without further ado, let's get started. So before I start then, just a quick thing, this deck is not sleeved because I am actually waiting for sleeves to arrive, so please don't slam me in the comments saying your deck's not sleeved. I understand it's not, but because I'm still trying to tweak it now and again, try and figure out if it does run, doesn't run, I'm just waiting for the sleeves to arrive before I actually do. So without further ado then, for the monsters of this deck, of course, I'm running 3 copies of Sky Striker Ace Ray. She's probably the deck's main monster you want to try and get, because she has a quick effect. You contribute this card and special summon 1 Sky Striker Ace monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone, so you basically link with it. While this card is in your graveyard, if a face-up Sky Striker link monster you control is destroyed by a battle or leaves the field because of a card effect, well, your opponent's card effect, sorry, you can special summon this card. You can only use each effect of Sky Striker Ace once per turn. But the thing is, you basically either summon it, keep it on field, or if you can special summon it with another effect, tribute her, go into your link plays and stuff with her. So she is sort of the deck's main monster you want to try and get into. So next up then, I have 3 copies of the other Sky Striker Ace, that's Sky Striker Ace Rose. Rose is a really good support card for this deck. Its effect is, if a Sky Striker monster is normal or special summoned, except herself, except during the damage step as well, you can special summon this card from your hand. If an opponent's monster in the extra monster zone is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of your card effect, while this card is in the graveyard, you can special summon her. Then you can negate the effect of 1 face-up monster your opponent controls until the end of this turn, and you can only use it once per turn. So say if you normal summon your Ray or special summon her, and you have this card in your hand, you can just simply special summon her with your Ray and go into your Link 2 plays. I mainly use it for 2 different Sky Strikers. I'll get into that, of course, with the extra deck. But I really like Sky Striker Ace Rose. So next up then for the monsters, I run 3 copies of my hand trap, is Droll and Lockbird. The reason I run Droll and Lockbird only is because it stops your opponent from adding cards from the main deck to the hand. So with a lot of cards that say you can add it when it leaves the field, stuff like that, it's really handy to have Droll and Lockbird just to lock your opponent out of plays. So that's why I run 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. So that is it for the monsters. Next up for the spells then, I run 2 copies, of course, of Sky Striker Mecha Widow Anchor, one of the main spell cards for this deck. If you control no monsters in your main monster zone, you can target 1 face-up effect monster on the field and negate that face-up monster's effects until the end of this turn. But, of course, then if you have 3 or more spell cards in your graveyard, you can take control of that monster until the end turn. So with Widow Anchor, it's really good, because you can take control of your opponent's monster, because as every Sky Striker player knows, you'll probably have 3 spell cards in the grave pretty fast. Take control of it and go into a Link 2, Link 3, Link 4, or higher if you can. I mainly use them just for 1 of my Link cards, as you'll see soon, as I said with like the Rose, sorry. But I really like Widow Anchor, and it's such a useful card for this deck. So of the one-ofs then, I run 1 copy of Sky Striker Mecha Hornet Drones. This card is limited for a good reason. It's a quick play spell. But if you control no monsters in your main monster zone, you can special summon 1 Sky Striker Ace token in defense position, which it can't be tributed. And if you have 3 or more spell cards after this resolves, the token's attack and defense become 1500 instead. We're not bothered by that. It's just the fact it's a quick play spell card that if your opponent gets rid of all your monsters, you can just simply activate this, create a token on your field, and defend, or again go into your link plays. So another one then is Sky Striker Mecha Modules Multi-Roll, another limited card. And for good reason, because once per turn you can target 1 of a card you control. Send that card to the graveyard. Also, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to this spell card's activation for the rest of this turn, even if this card leaves the field. You can only gain the previous effect once per turn. So it's really handy for that, because your opponent can't stop you activating your multi-rolls. And then once per turn during the end phase, you can set Sky Striker spell cards with different names from your graveyard equal to the number of Sky Striker spell cards you activated this turn while this card is face up on the field, but banish them when they leave the field. So what this basically means then is stuff like your Hornet Drones or your Widow Anchor. You activate it, create a token, set your Widow Anchor. Next turn you activate the Widow Anchor on your opponent's turn with your multi-roll there. And then during the end phase, you get to reset both of these cards. And because of both quick play spells, you can just reactivate them again if you can meet the requirements, of course. But it's a good reason that is at 1. So the next one of then, just because it's another Sky Striker, is Sky Striker Maneuver Vector Blast. If you control no monsters in your main monster zone, which I think all the Sky Striker spell cards pretty much say that, each player sends the top 2 cards of the deck to the grave, or as many as possible, if less than 2. Then, if you sent at least 1 card to your graveyard and have 3 or more spell cards in your grave, again, a lot of Sky Striker spell cards say that, you can shuffle all your opponent's monsters from the extra monster zone into the deck. So if they need a link being, a link to get the combos going, I know it's all changed now with Master Rule 5 where you don't really need links, but in a link heavy deck, something like Crusaders, they're going to want to get that main Crusader monster, for an example, just because I play I've faced Crusaders, sorry. I'm sort of just rambling now. It's really, really handy to get rid of that card to set up your plays. So next up then for the free cards is of course Sky Striker Airspace Area 0. This is your field spell for the deck. And what can you say about this card except it is a must at this deck. Because you can target one of the cards you control. You excavate the top 3 cards of your deck, and if you do, you can add 1 excavated Sky Striker card to your hand, also shuffle the rest into the deck. Then, if you excavate the Sky Striker card, send a targeted card to the graveyard. So, if this card is in the field zone, it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect. You can special summon 1 Sky Striker Ace monster from your deck. You can only use each effect of Area 0, I can't speak, once per turn. So what this card basically does is you excavate the top 3 cards of your deck. You add a Sky Striker card, so it doesn't have to be a spell. It can be either spell or monster, sorry. Add it to your hand, but then because you've done that, you can send the rest to the graveyard. So say if you draw your Vector Blast or multi-rolls and Sky Striker Ace Ray or Rose, you can add the Sky Striker Ace monster and send the other 2 spell cards straight to the graveyard, which automatically sets up your graveyard for the 3 cards that you need. So it's really, really handy to have 3 of them. So next up then, I run 3 copies of Sky Striker Mecha Eagle Booster. A lot of people don't really like this card. I think it's quite a good card. It's a quick play spell. If you control no monsters in your main monster zone, you can target 1 face-up monster on the field. That target is unaffected by card effects this turn, except its own. And if you have 3 or more spell cards, it cannot be destroyed by battle this turn. So this card's really, really good then for your Sky Striker links, especially if you've only got 1 on the field. Because not only that, it's unaffected by effects, except its own effect, and it can't be destroyed by battle that turn, so it gives you another turn to sort of try and get your plays going, or try and boost up the attack, defense, whatever, to get rid of your opponent's card. So that's why I run 3 copies of it, just in case 1 gets negated, and I happen to have 2. So next up for the free cards then, I run 3 copies of Sky Striker Maneuver Afterburners. Unfortunately, this isn't a quick play spell, but you'll understand why not. If you control no monsters in your main monster zone, you can target 1 face-up monster on the field, destroy it. Then if you have 3 or more spells in your grave, I really can't speak today, I do apologise. You can destroy 1 spell or trap card on the field. So it's really good to get rid of a problem monster if it can be destroyed by card effects. I know stuff like Dragoon and Ultimate Falcon are seeing a lot of plays these days, especially at my locals. It won't really work on them, but other cards that can be destroyed, it is really good. And not only that, but you can get rid of your own monster if you need to get rid of a problem spell or trap. So next up then, I run 3 copies of Sky Striker Maneuver Jamming Waves. Again, it's not a quick play spell, and you'll see why. Because if you control no monsters in your main monster zone, target 1 set spell or trap, destroy it. And if you have 3 or more in your spell card, you can destroy 1 monster on the field. So it's sort of the reverse of the Afterburners. These two that one gets rid of a monster. If you have don't have 3 spells in your grave, that one gets rid of a set spell or trap. And then, of course, the roles reverse, so Afterburners gets rid of a spell, and Jamming Waves gets rid of a monster. So next up then, I run 3 copies of Sky Striker Mecha Shark Cannon. Again, this one can be a quick play, and it's good that it is, because if it was a normal, it wouldn't be as powerful. But if you control no monsters in your main monster zones, you can target one monster in your opponent's graveyard and banish that monster. Or if you have 3 or more spells in your graveyard, you can special summon that monster to your side of the field instead, but it can't declare an attack. But it doesn't matter, because you can just link it off and go into your other plays or other sort of styles. If you can get a monster that you can use for a different play, then yeah, go ahead. You can just return it. But I use it for links. Just 2 seconds. Sorry, just getting a drink of coffee. And that's why I run 3 copies of it, because it banishes a card from the graveyard, which stops your opponent doing a lot of plays. So next up then, for 2s, again, I run 2 copies of Sky Striker Hercules base. I'm not even going to try and say the third word in that. It's a quick play spell, and activate this card if you control no monsters in your main monster zones. The equipped monster cannot attack directly. It can make a second attack on monsters during each battle phase. And if the equipped monster destroys a monster by its attack, while you have 3 or more spell cards in the grave, you get to draw a card. So it's really good for the Sky Strikers. I'll explain which one I mainly use it on. But not only that as well, if you equip it to your opponent's monster, they can't attack directly. So it kind of stops your opponent from dealing you damage. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard by card effect, you can target up to 3 Sky Striker cards in your grave, accept itself, and shuffle them back into the deck. So if you can get rid of it with like your multi-roll, or not multi-roll, sorry, Afterburners is the one I mainly use. You can return like some of your monsters back, or spells that you want to return, like your Anchor or Shark Cannon. You can just add them back to you shuffle them back into your deck. So next up then, for the new support cards really, is 2 copies of Sky Striker Maneuver Scissors Cross. A lot of people, again, I haven't really seen people run this card, but I kind of like it, because if you control no monsters in your main monster zone, you can target one level 4 or one level 4 Sky Striker Ace monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. Or if you have 3 spells in the grave, you can special summon it instead. So this is your Raise or your Rose. So it's really good just to get them back to your hand or back to the field if you need to go into combo plays. So next up then, for the spell cards that aren't Sky Striker spells, starting off then, and I'm going to probably get a lot of grief for these, but I do run 2 copies of Mystic Mine. And the reason I run it is, a lot of people know what Mystic Mine does, but if you don't, it's if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, your opponent cannot activate monster effects or declare an attack. If you control more monsters than your opponent does, you can't activate monster effects or attack. And once per turn during the end phase, if both players control the same amount of monsters, destroy this card. Now, the reason I run Mystic Mine in this deck is because 9 out of 10 times when I'm actually running this deck, is I will have 1 monster on the field at a time. So it basically, if my opponent set up a really hard board, but he can't stop me activating Mystic Mine or get rid of it if they've got no spell or trap destruction, is they have to then try and get themselves down to 1 monster for them to attack. And I'll explain the monster I actually do run Mystic Mine with, and you'll see why. But it is actually quite helpful for this deck. So next up then, I run 1 copy of another limited card, is Reinforcement of the Army. Very simple. You add a level 4 or lower warrior monster from your deck to your hand. So it's good to search out your Raise or your Rose. That's the only reason why it's in here. So next up then, I run 1 copy of the Warrior Returning Alive. You target a warrior monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. So your Rose or your Raise again. 1 copy of Mind Control. So again, a lot of people know what it does, but if you don't, it's you target 1 monster your opponent controls, and until the end phase you take control of it, but it can't declare an attack or be tributed. So what I use Mind Control for is I use it for a specific monster, that's why there's only 1 copy, is basically just to link it off. And then these 2 are, sometimes I add them in, sometimes I don't. It depends on how I want to run it. But that is 2 copies of Pot of Duality. Now, if people don't know what pot of duality is, you activate the top 3 cards of your deck and you add one of them to your hand. Also shuffle the rest back into your deck. You can only activate it once per turn, and you cannot special summon the turn you activate this card. So pot of duality is really good because it gets another spell card into your grave for the Sky Strikers, but you also get to add a card from your deck to your hand. So that's why I only run 2 copies now and again. So that's it then for the main deck. For the extra deck, I run, of course, 3 copies now of the main link monster you want to run is Sky Striker Ace Kagari. I love Kagari. She's one of my favourite cards of all times. It just takes 1 non-fire Sky Striker, which all the Sky Strikers are non-fire. And what this card is, if this card is special summoned, you can target a Sky Striker spell card in your grave, add it to your hand. So your Widow Anchor, your multi-roll, shark cannons, you can just add them back when she's summoned. Also, it gains 100 attack for each spell card in your grave. You can only special summon Sky Striker Ace Kagari once per turn. I think that was the errata they actually did. I can't remember if she did get errated, I'm not sure about that. Comment down below if she did get errated or they just changed it because of the engage and unlimited. But Sky Striker Ace Kagari is one of the main link monsters that I actually go into because of that return effect and that attack boost. When you've got stuff like Mystic Mine on the field, it's really good because then you just gain an attack and attack and attack, enough to be able to beat over most things. So next up then, I run 3 copies of the Link 2 Sky Striker, that is Sky Striker Ace Zeke. Now, as I was saying earlier with the Widow Anchor and the Mind Control, this is the monster I go into. It takes 2 monsters, including a Sky Striker Ace monster. So I use one of mine, steal one of my opponents, and then link it off into Zeke. Because, not only that as well, but it must be link summoned. You can only special summon Sky Striker Ace Zeke once per turn. If this card is link summoned, you can target 1 face-up monster on the field, banish it, until your opponent's next end phase. And then once per turn, you can target 1 other card you control. This card gains 1000 attack. Then send a target monster to the graveyard. It gains it, but it's not till the end phase, which is really, really good for this, because if you use your shark cannons to return a monster from the grave, Widow Anchor or Mind Control, you can actually boost up its attack once per turn by 1000, and it keeps going up. Because it doesn't gain it until the end phase or a certain phase, it just keeps gaining attack. So that's why I have a lot of my opponent's control cards, which allow me to take control of my opponent's cards, mainly to either bring him out or just to increase his attack. And if you've got something like Mystic Mine on, they've got a full field where they can't activate effects to stop you, you're just going to keep doing it. So that's why I run 3 copies of Zeke. So next up then is 3 copies of Sky Striker Ace Suzuki. Suzuki is really good for the deck. It just takes 1 non-water Sky Striker Ace monster. They're not water, they're dark. Monsters your opponent controls loses 100 attack and defense for each spell card in your graveyard. So with Sky Strikers being spell heavy, there's going to be quite a few spell cards, so they're going to lose a fair bit of attack. But that's not what you care about. It's once per turn. During the end phase, this card was special summoned this turn. You can add a Sky Striker spell card from your deck to your hand, with a name different from the cards in your graveyard. So if you have, say, only 1 card in the graveyard, let's say Shark Cannon, you can actually add your Widow Anchor from your deck to your hand by using Suzuki. So all you have to do is special summon her. So you summon, you go into Suzuki, Suzuki's effect will activate during the end phase, then you can just link her off. You can just link her off into your Kagari or the other ones. So that's why I really like Suzuki for this deck. So next up then, I run 3 copies of the Sky Striker Ace Hayate. This is my Mystic Mine card, the one when I said earlier in the video, I run a specific card with Mystic Mine, it's Hayate. Because she takes 1 non-wind Sky Striker Ace monster, as I said, they're all dark. You can only special summon her once per turn. This card can attack directly, and after damage calculate, if this card battles, you can send a Sky Striker card from your deck to your grave. Yeah, you can send a spell card so you can boost up your Kagaris if you need to go back into her, but it's that attack directly I use. If you have Mystic Mine on with just Hayate and your opponent has a full board of, say, 3 or 4 monsters, they can't do any sort of plays, they can't link, they can't synchro, they can't exceed, anything like that. She's just going to keep attacking directly, and at 1500, you're going to go 1500 points damage, 3000, 4, 5, 6, 7, 5, game. So it doesn't take too many turns, but she is actually really good with Mystic Mind. That's why I run 3 copies. And only 2 copies of Mystic Mind, because this is the card I use it for. So, but I like Hayate. And then finally then, for the last 3, is 3 copies of Sky Striker Ace Kana, whatever you want to call her. I call her Kana. She takes 1 non-Earth Sky Striker Ace monster. As I said, they're all dark. If this card is special summoned, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. It cannot attack until the end of your opponent's next turn. So it stops a monster from destroying. Also, each time you activate a Sky Striker spell card or its effect, so if you play your Area 0, which is already there, or another Sky Striker, you gain 100 life points immediately after the card resolves. You can only special summon her once per turn. So she's a life point gain. I mainly use her if I'm low on life points. I need to start making my life points a bit more. I've still got a few spell cards. And you activate them, you keep gaining life points. It's really, really good for that. But that's all I mainly use it for. So with that then, that is the end of the deck profile. I hope and pray you like this video. If you do, give this video a thumbs up. And if you, as I said, if you can comment down below what you like about the deck, what you didn't like about the deck, be more than happy to reply and answer any questions you've got, or just because you feel bored. If you watch this video and you're bored, comment down below, give us a thumbs up, and I will see you all in the next video, and thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.